Hello, today is Monday, November 10th. Welcome to episode 525 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. I'm NSI Advisory Board member Lester Munson. I'm joined today by founder and executive director Jamil Jaffer and fellow Jessica Jones.
Say it with a smile, Les.
Perhaps one day a senior fellow. Dare to dream.
That's actually why I keep doing the show. I'm just
Dare to
waiting.
dream.
Folks, listen to every episode. She's going to be promoted at some point. When will it be? Today,
Inshallah.
we are going to talk about the burning issue that was recently considered by the International Maritime Organization, which is taxes or user fees on commercial shipping around the world. For those of you who don't
sorry,
know,
just woke up.
Please try to stay with me here, Mr. Founder. This is an important national security issue. The International Maritime Organization, folks, is an organization based in London. It is an agency of the United Nations. The U.S. Government belongs to the IMO, as do scores of other nations around the world. And last month, the IMO postponed a vote that was years in the making on a user fee structure or taxes on fuel consumed by commercial ships. This was seen as an effort to stop climate change by adding costs to fuel for cargo ships, particularly those that burned more carbon. The fees would have added somewhere between 12 to 77% to the fuel costs of those ships. According to one study, the average cost for a U.S. commercial shipping voyage would be increased by $250,000. The Trump administration viewed this as a threat to the U.S. economy, as a possible harbinger of more inflation, so they opposed it. They went out using diplomacy, using the State Department, using other officials in the U.S. government, and persuaded other countries to vote to postpone, which is effectively killing this idea. And last month, there was a vote in the IMO, in fact, to postpone this. So the Trump administration prevailed in its view. There was a story in the New York Times over the weekend detailing what they called the bullying tactics employed by the Trump administration, such as telling foreign diplomats that they would lose their visa privileges to the United States if their government voted in favor of this global tax. There's a whole lot of issues to unpack here, folks. Jones, I want to go to you and get your reaction to this. I know you've been focused on it like a laser beam and have some thoughts about the role of the IMO, about international organizations levying taxes on American shippers and other things like that, and decisions at the UN potentially impacting the U.S. economy. Please share.
Thank you, Les, for turning to me first. As you can tell, it was burning. I needed so much coffee this morning to get just energized on this topic. So I think I will say maybe there's not too much disagreement here on the show about these bullying tactics and how serious they are. If the New York Times article on it is the full story, it just seems like normal diplomacy. I don't know, talking to colleagues, world leaders, and partners. I don't really see where the strong arming is. I think that would be just called persuasion. I'm not sure. So I'd love actually if we had a little Morgan Vina on here. She's unable to join us this morning to give us some, insider stories on what goes on in some of these negotiations and side conversations, because, I'd love her take on it. But from what we've seen, it doesn't look too serious. It doesn't look like it's too coercive. Obviously, shipping, we've talked a lot in the show here about international trade, international shipping, the rising costs that we've just seen generally. And so adding a fee imposition on it right now, of course, it's on the top of, it's something the Trump administration is going to focus on. And we talk about, shipbuilding here in the U.S. and port infrastructure and modernization and innovation. So it's not surprising that they've taken this up. The Trump administration is active on the world stage. We've discussed here on the show how, there's no problems of midterms and Senate votes and injunctions. So they really can lean into, diplomacy and personality and phone calls and, kind of like, I'm doing my elbows if you can't see that, little elbowing in the rooms to get things done. So I'm not sure this is as spicy as you led us to believe when you proposed this topic, Les. kind of a normal
Jones,
take.
are you telling us that you support the Trump administration in one of its highest diplomatic priorities?
I support the American shipbuilding and international trade capabilities.
Yeah, which
That's right.
effectively makes you pro-Trump. Mr. Jaffer,
Mr. Munson.
I will just throw this at you. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, noted protector of the global climate, said that the administration is acting like gangsters in the way they're treating other countries. Are you outraged, yes or no?
No.
So you are another supporter of the Trump administration in this diplomatic priority of the State Department.
If the idea is should we not pay silly fees to the UN for silly things, the answer is no. I don't support that, and I support the Trump administration being opposed to that. And the idea that we are bullying other diplomats. I mean, nobody's criticizing what they're wearing, right? Nobody's going after their kids or their spouses. They're just saying, look, if you don't vote for this thing, your country won't get to have its ships, its sailors get off on U.S. shores. You won't be able to come to the U.S. with a visa. That's just called pressure. That's called international politics. That's called doing their job, right? Here's I think the real lesson for the nations of the world and the UN, global climate, whatever. If you tell the Trump administration it's a done deal, you are begging them to make it not a done deal. That's what happened here. They're like, oh, this has been going on for so many years. Everyone's spent so much time negotiating it. It is a fait accompli. Good luck with that. It is not. It won't be. And they're going to use whatever tactics they want. The idea that any diplomats or anybody who's been around foreign affairs is going to complain about bullying on this stuff, like, they should go home, take your debate pass, go home, send somebody with guts.
So, Jamil, to be clear, you are again endorsing the Trump administration position on one of its top diplomatic priorities.
Well, if this is the top diplomatic priorities, we got a lot bigger problems, right?
I wouldn't phrase it like that. Yeah.
We just put an aircraft carrier in the Caribbean. Okay, we have a simmering conflict in the Middle East, a simmering conflict in Taiwan, an actual war in Ukraine. I don't think this is anywhere near the top of the priority list, but if you're gonna tell them it's a done deal and they don't like it, they're gonna make it an undone deal. That's what you just saw here. And I think the interesting thing is the real beef that the New York Times has is not just the quote unquote bullying of the big countries. They said, oh, well, the Trump administration was really, really mean to the poorer countries that are dependent on the United States for their economic success. Well, we're dependent on international shipping for our economic success. So if it's going to cost $250,000 more to ship things, we're going to put pressure on everybody, rich, poor, otherwise, and we're going to use whatever pressure we need to get rid of this silly idea. And guess what? Scoreboard. It worked.
All right, I'm going to count both of you as knuckle-dragging America First types from now on.
Wait, are you pro-global tax that goes to the UN? That's what I'm hearing in your tone there.
No, not at all. I'm desperately trying to think of a fault line here between me and the two of you. And I think, Jamil, I'm going to pick on you.
Well, Jess is our in-house liberal. Like, I don't know what, she's the millennial or whatever. I don't know why she doesn't care about climate change.
Anti-bullying? No, just kidding.
Why do you love pollution, Jess?
You've been really disappointing on this podcast so far for me. So I'm going to have to pick on Jaffer, which is something I hate to do.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think this is about, and here's the one difference. I totally agree with you guys. The whole thing is kind of bananas. And kudos to the Trump administration for breaking the back of the UN on this thing, because it was really stupid. It would impact the U.S. economy in a bad way. It was not.
Here comes the but.
Policy. Go ahead.
Here comes the but.
No, it's from you, Les.
You said, you can't tell the Trump administration it's a done deal because then they'll fight it. Yes, that may be true, but that's not the real thing here. The real thing here is it's actually a horrible policy on a couple of levels. One is it would directly impact the U.S. economy and possibly increase inflation here, which is bad for our way of life, which is bad for our national security, which is bad for our international relations. And also, it would empower an international organization by the UN by giving it the power to levy taxes and fees around the world, making it, giving it more and more sovereignty, which I don't think is a great idea at the end of the day, and totally gets away from the purpose of the UN, which is to be a convening space for actual sovereigns to go talk to each other about the issues between them. And so this was a horrible idea on policy grounds, and good for the Trump administration for recognizing that and fighting it and doing what they had to do to defeat it. And if you got to threaten people with revoking their visas, good. Let's do that on other stuff too. Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks, as always, to Kelly Crowley, Taylor Lane, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us again on Wednesday, November 12th, for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. Of course, we're on YouTube. Check out Jones's elbow movements there. And if you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.